In 2026, it's increasingly difficult to tell where beauty ends and wellness begins. Supplements for achieving healthy skin share shelf space with serums and eye creams. But swatching and sampling are a core part of the beauty retail experience. In many cases, it's what brings consumers into the store in the first place, to try things, to feel them, to see the color in real life. But wellness doesn't have that advantage. You can't swatch a supplement or you can't try on a collagen powder. It doesn't have that instant gratification. So what does it take for a wellness brand to not only earn its place on the shelf, but also make it into the shopper's basket? What does success look like from a retailer perspective? And how do founders translate wellness efficacy in a retail environment that's built on sensory-driven storytelling? So let's start the stage with Laura, with Ulta, with an update on the current state of wellness at Ulta Beauty. We've seen a lot of retailers experiment with wellness, launching buzzy assortments, only to pull back when the category proves difficult to scale. Ulta has taken the opposite approach, doubling down with experiential wellness boutiques and a growing assortment of brands. So what signals convinced Ulta Beauty that wellness was worth the investment, and how do you define the role wellness plays within the broader beauty shopping journey today?
Yeah, thanks for having me first, Cristina and team. For us, it always starts with the consumer. So what we know about the Ulta Beauty guest is 72% of them are telling us that they're already prioritizing wellness in their daily lives. 2/3 have told us they're going to continue to increase their focus and spend on it within the next 12 months. In addition, when we look at market opportunities, we do look at the market, and we know that beauty and wellness has been converging for quite some time. The market's really healthy. It's actually larger and growing faster than beauty. And finally, really from an emotional perspective, what we know is consumers want to look good, but they also want to feel good. And so in many ways, yeah, of course. And in many ways, right, beauty and wellness almost complete each other in the consumer shopping journey today. And so for us, that's really what gave us confidence. In addition, from a retail perspective, we've been in the beauty industry for 35 years. We have 46 million loyalty members who trust us, are very engaged with us. And they've increasingly told us, their desire for us to carry more and more of these products. But they also have signaled that this can be an overwhelming category for them to shop and for them to really understand. And so what we've done, especially over the last, I'd say 12 to 18 months, was really introduce Wellness by Ulta Beauty, underpinned by a pretty simple product framework, focusing on nutrition and supplements, intimate care, rest and reset, so think sleep and aromatherapy, wind down routines, and essential routines to really holistically kind of meet that guest where they are in their journey. And when we pair that in our model, which is to really make beauty and wellness very inclusive, very approachable, what we found is a resounding, yes from the consumer and an increasing desire for more.
Amazing. Shizu, Apothecary has built a unique position translating Japanese-inspired farm-to-table herbal remedies for a modern consumer. And you've scaled it pretty quickly, expanding into all 480 Sprouts locations, roughly 350 Whole Foods stores, and more than 300 doors at Ulta Beauty. So how have you approached translating a traditionally wellness-first product concept into different retail environments? And what similarities or what differences have you seen between how the brand shows up in natural grocery versus beauty retail?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's something that we think about actually quite frequently. I feel like every time we launch a new retailer, we take the feedback pretty quickly and are always changing our packaging, especially the front packaging. I think with beauty, I think about people coming in for aspiration, but for wellness, people are coming in for transformation. So you really have to sell the difference between, okay, an aspiration is how do I want to look? Transformation is how do I want to feel? And so I often tell our team when we think about the marketing of our products, how do we sell the feeling that people want to actually have as an outcome? And I think that's where wellness is going, is an outcome-driven landscape.
That's a really great point.
Thank you.
And then Charlotte, with Alice Mushrooms, you closed a $8 million Series A, and retail has been a major engine for the brand. Your current retail distribution includes Target, Erewhon, Whole Foods, Sprouts, and other specialty retailers. What is your broader retail marketing strategy when it comes to storytelling, education, and sampling? And how do those elements work together to drive in-store sales?
Yeah. I mean, we do a lot of sampling. I think something that's quite unique about our product is that it tastes really good and is something that people are really familiar with. Everyone wants to try a bite of chocolate, right? So it's not as difficult, I think, with traditional VMS where, you know, if you're walking down the aisle at Whole Foods and someone's like, take this capsule, it's a little like, what? So the sheer fact that we're chocolate, I think, has been really impactful. And the fact that we also have benefits that work right away. So a lot of times we'll see, you know, we have a focus in energy chocolate, and we'll sample that out to someone, and they'll come back around 30 minutes later when they finish shopping, and they're like, I feel really good. I'm gonna buy that. So we've seen, you know, kind of how beverage says, you know, getting drinks to lips. We say the same thing, chocolate to lips, because I think when you have a great product, sampling is one of the absolute best things you can do. And I think in terms of kind of education, right, we're a really high education product. Mushrooms are still finding their way in the wellness and the beauty space. And so we're constantly aware of that and what we have to overcome so that we can get people to pay attention to our product, get them to understand what a functional mushroom is and how it works and what it does. And that it's also not something that's fringe, right? That it feels really approachable and safe. And you really see that with a lot of our packaging. And I think more than anything, we take inspiration on packaging from beauty more than we do from supplement. And I think that really shows on how we show up on shelf.
Yeah, definitely. Both of you do. So Lauren, we're seeing a lot of innovation in ingestible beauty right now, and not just in ingredients, but also in format and flavor and the overall sensory experience. Collagen is one of the most widely used ingredients across beauty, wellness, and Tosla is at the forefront of collagen supplement innovations. So historically, many collagen supplements have not exactly been pleasant to the tongue. So from liquids to powders and other delivery systems, how do format, flavor, and mouthfeel influence consumer behavior and whether people actually stick to taking supplement daily as directed?
Yes, well, thanks for having me. I think there's some interesting parallels with beauty and skincare. If you think about actually K-beauty, I think is a great example of, if you remember actually the first wave of K-beauty, if you're old like me, back in the day when K-beauty was all about actually just like interesting textures and kind of the look and feel, but was like a bit light on efficacy. And it kind of fizzled out. I think the second wave of K-beauty brought all the textures and fun, but also brought a lot of the science and efficacy and proof points. And that's why you're seeing this like huge uptick again in K-beauty and actually adoption. So what you know is like to get results, you have to have compliance is critical. So like nobody wants to use a vitamin C serum that's like sticky and smells like hot dogs, right? So, but we know that vitamin C takes 8 weeks to see results, right? So the same applies for supplements. So the idea is how do you approach all those sensorial factors to ensure compliance so you see results? And so I think that's what Tosla does really well in terms of like looking at all those different parameters and not just looking at ingredient efficacy. So it's about offering a wide range of taste profiles, giving the ability to customize there, then offering on the flip side then the efficacy piece of it with then the speed to development, et cetera. So compliance on all those different things. And I think you asked about channel strategy, and I think that is also plays a huge part in that, because how that comes to life in channel, I think is really interesting too, because all those different parts and pieces has to convince the consumer on things like TikTok, where it's bananas to me that like, the top selling category is wellness on TikTok, which was so counterintuitive, something that's like not real, selling you on something that's wellness. But it's like the flavors getting you intrigued and like to buy, and then having visuals to sell you on the performance, meaning that you have to have like the efficacy to show actually the demonstrable performance, and then actually the ratings and reviews to really bring you in. So that means it actually has to taste good. So I think all those things have to translate. And so I think it all kind of comes together in a finished good that Toastle's really done well.
Yeah, totally. Laura, from a retail perspective, do you find shoppers filling their baskets with both beauty and wellness? Are there specific products, wellness products, that perform well with the beauty shopper. And by bringing these two worlds together, you're creating what is like a hybrid consumer who expects to shop for longevity at the same time as beauty. So how do you decide which types of wellness products pair well with the beauty customer?
Yeah, I think it's a complicated answer, to be honest. So, first of all, we absolutely see our consumer shopping across our store. So they are buying wellness. They're also buying prestige cosmetics. They're buying mass skincare with wellness. They're buying into body care. They really are starting to cross shop. And one of the interesting things is thinking about routines, right? So our guests are really into routines. I think we see them all the time on platforms like TikTok. And so, they're looking at maybe a wrinkle treatment, and they're treating their skin with collagen. And then we're also offering them ingestible collagen to complete kind of their journey, right? And to pair with that. So that's working really well. I'd say things like parts of the day and thinking about a wind down routine, right? Sleep is so critical. Consumers, especially depending on where they are in their life stage, have some challenges with sleep. No one seems to get enough, right? And so, finding different solutions in one retailer to really help support those guest routines has also been really successful for us. I think in terms of, what we look for and how we're kind of making the leap, recognizing that one, adoption, especially in the US, which is where we're primarily focusing out of the gate with our wellness strategy, is uneven, right? The coasts tend to be a little bit more mature in the space, a little bit more knowledgeable, possibly a little bit more science-led. There are a lot of consumers who are just starting on their wellness journey. And so for us being in retail, it's really important that we're able to help the guests navigate and provide them with the right education for where they are on those journeys, and also have a product set that really matches kind of where they are throughout those life stages and throughout those journeys as well.
Yeah, totally. Shizu and Charlotte, wellness has historically looked really clinical and bland, but I think both your brands really defy that. So how has beauty influenced the way that you've built both of your brands in terms of packaging, in terms of distribution? Shizu, what about you first?
Yeah, so we did a rebrand in 2023. It was like go to market, learn some stuff, fail a little, and then take that iteration and kind of relaunch. Took about 18 months for that rebrand to go out. And that was when we debuted tinctures. And tinctures was a form factor that I don't think was actually like at all out there. It looks like a beauty product. We still have people from Ulta putting it on their face. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Like it's
We're
supposed
working
to
on that.
go in your mouth. Yeah. So, a lot of education. So now the signage at Ulta has like a dropper going in the mouth.
Okay.
So it's very clear where this is supposed to go in your body. Not on, but in. So that's number one in terms of signage and display. But the packaging, I think a lot of that has been inspired from my heritage. So I'm Japanese, was born from a family of immigrants. And so we really think about how do we bridge authority of 5,000 years of ancient medicine with then the authenticity and the sort of story of where we are today in modern society. So I think our packaging really relates to that. So you get like the gold bridge with our logo. And then we really call out the ingredient, because one thing that we've learned in wellness, food is intent-based, beauty is inspiration-based. And so if people are in there for inspiration, you need to have an ingredient that they're like, oh, my doctor talked about that. Creatine, pharma-GABA, magnesium. They don't go for, we call our products like wind down. They haven't necessarily heard of wind down, but they might have heard of the L-theanine in wind down. Mm-hmm. So the packaging has to kind of call people into that. So that's something that we've really taken to feedback.
And then Charlotte, your brand too, it's very beautiful and joyful. So how have you learned from beauty in that way?
Yeah, I think interesting to what you were saying earlier about aspiration, I think that's something we really lean into with our packaging, wanting it to feel aspirational, wanting it to feel like the way in beauty, right? There's a way that you're thinking that you're going to look, right? And we want to translate that into how you're going to feel, and something that feels tactile. And my business partner, she's kind of the creative genius behind the tins, and she had this idea of, I want to create that sensory association of when you hear the click of the tin opening with someone, kind of like when you pop a Coca-Cola bottle and you hear that fizz and you have that pop. So that was all something that we wanted to do, like very just psychological, and creating this holistic experience with just the tactile element of the packaging. But I think for us, it's bringing joy to the VMS aisle, which a lot of times can feel like a bunch of white pill bottles. And so when you see something that's fun and different and feels like not something you put away in your medicine cabinet, but for our sleep chocolate, I want to have that out on my guest room bedside table as something that feels elevated and luxurious for someone who's staying at my house to have. Something that you'd be excited to find in a hotel minibar. So that's really how we think about packaging. I think the other thing is just like our aesthetic being very clean. I think a lot of brands and kind of this emerging space, right? They're doing a lot, and there's really fun stuff that you can do, but mushrooms still are a little fringe. And so by us keeping that packaging something that feels really clean, modern, aesthetic, it's again something that I hope someone in Midtown feels comfortable having on their desk, right? And not something that you want to hide away. And so making it something that you can really incorporate into your identity was crucial for us with packaging.
Yeah, I want to double down on that, Charlotte, because I think that's what's changed so quickly and is continuing to change, that from a retail perspective, we're really excited about. It's no longer just the bar you're clearing is it has to work and you have to get a consumer to try it and the taste has to be good. It also has to look beautiful. And I think all three of you, because you haven't talked about your new one yet, but have done an incredible job of doing that. And we're seeing that come even more in what's coming in innovation. And that's what gets us also really excited.
Yeah, definitely. So Lauren, supplements operate on a very different regulatory framework than beauty, with stricter compliance requirements, testing standards, and just more rigorous scrutiny of claims, which is, of course, all wellness. But what do brands underestimate about compliance, testing, and formulation when entering the supplement space? And for the beauty founders in the room who might be looking to develop these ingestible products, how can the right manufacturing partner help?
All the sexy stuff. Yes. You get to talk all beautiful packaging and. Yeah, I mean, the compliance. I mean, it's topicals are very different from ingestibles.
Yeah.
I have to say, and the manufacturing set of manufacturers are very different than the contract manufacturers for topicals, which is I think an aha. So it's that there's very little overlap of who does that. So I think when you're in beauty and looking to source an ingestible, it's a different set that you're engaging with, and I think then it becomes a different sorts of like auditing and questions that you'll start to be asked. I think then you have to start thinking about what does the quality look like, the safety look like, how is that all kind of the ingredient compliancy, et cetera, because you essentially have to work back from the channels that you're going to be distributing on and what they're going to be asking for at the end of the day, and then essentially one step further, your consumer and what they're going to be asking for, because they're ultimately going to be kind of ripping your product apart and going to be ingesting it. I think it's really interesting what you're seeing happening from some of the retailers like TikTok, that once they changed hands, they actually revamped their wellness shop, their store, TikTok shop, to now require more documentation and testing. So before it was a bit like the Wild West, and now they're requiring actually ingredient testing, FDA audit or FDA certificates from the manufacturers, et cetera. So actually starting to level up a bit in terms of what's required. But I think you can expect at the very least to have assays required on your ingredients to make sure that they're formulated into the formula at the levels that you say they are. Audits on your FDA audits on your manufacturing facility. Breakdowns on contaminants within your formulations. And then just a general like site visit, I think would be helpful to understand where it's being manufactured, the provenance at the end of the day. So I think having all that comfort, I think looking at what happened last year with baby powder formula was really rough, if anybody followed that. So it was not good. And nobody wants that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
I would actually piggyback on that, because I think something that was shocking to me when I set out to make a supplement was how when you're starting out and before you get to a point where a retailer is going to be asking you or someone's going to be getting that, you can do anything. It's a little unregulated, right? Like if I was just to make a chocolate supplement and sell it at the farmer's market, no. And I think to a certain revenue level, you can get away with doing a lot and saying a lot of crazy stuff. And so I think that is caution I would give, because at the beginning it seems like this is so easy.
Yeah.
And it's really, I think, on brands, and brands that win are brands that start thinking about this stuff from day one. And I think that's where that level of brand trust is so important. Like I always tell people, like, you don't have to use our supplements, but make sure that you really trust who you're getting them from, because at a certain point, people can manufacture anywhere, say anything, whatever, before they hit a certain revenue threshold that gets the attention of the FDA or the FCC.
For Wizard, we have a supplement, and the claims for that were like, I mean, go bananas, whatever you want to say. Like the claims for my cosmetics, like that was like highly regulated, but the claims for the supplement, as long as you put the little asterisks on it, it's like, whatever you want to say. Like, but what I will say is that like, for, you know, for the founders out there, you own your claims from day one for your investors and whoever, and you are responsible for those. And so thinking ahead of what you're putting out there, I think is very important.
Yeah, I feel obligated to comment on that from a retailer perspective too.
Your retailers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing is from a retail perspective, consumer trust is the most important thing as you enter a category like this. And so I think everything you guys are saying are right. Like the more you can take in account for all of that from the beginning as you're building it, the better off. Because I will say, from an evaluation standpoint, we do look at documentation. We do look at claims. We have contracts, right, that these brands sign with us to do business with us that, protect both parties from certain things. But it is really important. And the marketing and what you say and how you say it is really important. And I think will continue to get more scrutiny as this category continues to grow.
Absolutely. And not to bring it back to Tosla, but I do think one of the things they do offer is proactive clinicals on all the formulations, which I think is pretty rad as a brand to have that level of confidence of like really well done consumer clinicals. So at least you know what you're starting with. It's actually been well vetted and validated, especially in the world of supplements, for sure.
It's a great point. And consumers now are going to be asking some really tough questions. They are more educated than ever, and they are tough out there. So yeah, the competition's tough. So Laura, Ulta Beauty has started presenting some more holistic solutions in store, pairing ingestibles with topicals for concerns like hair loss or skin health, rather than keeping the categories siloed. So what's driving that shift in merchandising strategy? And from a consumer behavior standpoint, are shoppers already thinking like that? Or does the retailer need to guide them in that direction to help them get more knowledge about that?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, there are certainly consumers who are a little bit more sophisticated. And what I'd say is, rewind, 5-6 years when the industry went through clean beauty and we didn't have ChatGPT and all of these lovely AI, tools that we have access to today. It might have taken the consumer a little bit longer to learn about specific ingredients and really more education. Consumers today are coming in with way more knowledge in this space than they were, 5 years ago, because so much more of it is so accessible. And so I think what that does is, yes, there are consumers who are very aware of ingredients. They're very aware of ingredient levels they're looking for in formulas. It puts a lot on the retailer in terms of really educating kind of our associates to be able to meet them kind of in that moment in that way. I would say equally, though, there are still a number of consumers across the country who aren't on the journey yet. And I can pick on my family, who I love. They live in Iowa, right? And I have aunts and uncles who are farmers, and they're like, you do what? And what is this? And why would I take that? And, I think we see all kinds. And so I think the biggest thing for us as a retailer that we want to make sure we do is to help those consumers find the right education that they need to make those decisions, and really to guide them if they're not thinking a holistic solution. That's an opportunity for us to guide them to a more holistic solution that they may not know that we've had historically.
Yeah, that's great. I want to talk about your journey at Ulta Beauty, because I remember when you launched at Ulta, I covered it because I was like, this is going to be big. This is a big moment for you and obviously for Ulta as well. So it's been now more than a year. So tell me, how is that? What have you learned about what it takes to really succeed in that environment? And how's it going?
Yeah, so we got connected to Keisha originally, and I think I just cold emailed her. I was like, hi. But I'm joking. But we launched on .com first, and I think that was a way to test, because, you know, the way that apothecary that I had envisioned was that we could be in healthcare and specialty, food and grocery, and beauty, this intersection of all three. Because that's what herbal medicine historically has been, at least in Asia. So beauty with Ulta, I think, has been, you know, let's test .com, let's see if it works, and then it worked. And our number one hero SKU, which is Blueburn, still drives almost 50% of the volume, both .com and in store, but also the same at Whole Foods, Sprouts as well. So I think the thesis has been pretty much on par with all of them. So we just launched 350 doors in July, and then we had the BIPOC end cap as well. But it's been so fun because I feel like we share notes. We're actively sharing notes about what we hear from the consumer when we go to educate at the stores themselves. And then we also get feedback from Laura and her team as well. So it really feels like a startup, like together, like we're building the ecosystem together. But it's been incredible. We just did our Journey East trips to Japan as well, where we covered, you know, ancient medicine and ancient rituals, and really tying that into the ritual and routines that also come parallel to beauty. So Ulta and that call to action just makes total sense.
Love it, yeah. And then Charlotte and Shizu, you're both in beauty and natural grocery retail. So are those consumers different? Do you find that you have different shoppers at different retail channels? Tell me more about that. Maybe Charlotte, you start.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit hard to differentiate at this point, and I think the taxonomy is falling away, right? I mean, if you think about it, like you were talking about sleep, right? I don't know what makes you more beautiful than being well rested, right? And I think consumers are really starting to get privy to that. And so I think more and more the wellness and the beauty consumer are the same consumer, right? If you even think about going into Whole Foods doesn't necessarily have a beauty section, but you go into the whole body section and you're like, this is gonna make me glow, right? And so I think more often than not, it's just starting to become exactly one and the same, and people are looking to wellness for beauty and beauty for wellness.
What do you think, Shizu?
I would agree. I think the one thing that sticks to mind for me is like we have primary and secondary packaging, and in beauty, I feel like that makes total sense. But in food, people like want to touch the bottle, right? And so you can't open it. So we are actively thinking about ways to sample tinctures because that hasn't been done. So we do see ourselves as the innovator in liquid, and how do we bring liquid and ability to have like single servings? So it's something that we're like on our innovation roadmap for natural, but generally I have found that the basket sizes are larger at Ulta and beauty than they are at food.
Yeah, and Charlotte, you were saying you have different sizes too. You have the individuals, 10 packs, larger packs.
Yep.
For that very reason. Is
Yeah,
that
we've
correct?
done a lot of different price pack architecture to meet different markets and be accessible wherever we are. Our hero, right, is our 16 serving tin, but then we have a slender tin that's at Target that just has 8 servings. We have pouches that have 10 of our single serves, and then we sell the single serves individually, which has been really neat because I think for us, our form factor being chocolate, right, that's really exciting in the supplement aisle. But then it can also be really exciting in impulse at checkout when you've got this $2.39 piece of chocolate that's going to help you get focused or help you sleep. So we've seen a lot of success with that. And I think that even speaks a little bit more to what we're all talking about here is wellness and beauty living outside of the wellness and beauty set. Like when we talk about us exceeding expectations at impulse, that's candy, right? Like that's people who at checkout are typically buying a Snickers bar or a magazine or whatever it is, and they're reaching for the wellness product. And I think that's a really cool shift that we're starting to see.
Yeah, super interesting. So Lauren, you sit at the intersection of science, innovation, and product development in ingestible beauty. So from that vantage point, what are the most interesting frontiers in that category right now that you're seeing emerge in this year?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of big ideas that we're seeing. One around, I think we've spoken to it a bit, is this idea of like shifting from this kind of like ingredient specific wellness to this idea of like system wellness. So, and this can be like a shift of like problem solution to more like, I think, emotional benefits and emotional end states. I think you spoke to it with like, so, and this is, I think, you know, if you were at Supply Side West, which is kind of like the feeder for Expo West, kind of, so like the raw materials, where a lot of like the innovation kind of emerges that you start to see on shelf. The storylines were really around like like the systems within the body and how they interact. So it's no longer about just like gut health or brain health or metabolism. It's like actually all those systems working together. So like how can you align those systems at the same time? So like gut and brain for mood and focus, or gut and skin for better glow and resiliency, or things like that. And so, you know, factored into that is things like precision microbiome science and additional like adaptogens and things like that. So I think it's really interesting how they're starting to leverage kind of these storylines together. So it's more than just one thing, which is pretty cool. I think. So for example, like I think I've seen like 600 powdered water mixes launched this week, for example, like that are, you know, have more than one benefit, you know, hydration and mood and focus and blah, blah. Anyway, so it's like becoming like color cosmetics all over again. Anyway, but so you're seeing that roll out. And the second was like around like, I think, beauty, kind of beauty within evolving. So this idea of like, less around like these singular benefits are of beauty, like glow or things like that, and more around like resiliency. So like more like skin stress or how skin responds to stress or inflammation. And so getting a bit deeper in terms of like those beauty benefits as you're seeing inflammation like permeate everything at the end of the day. And then some really interesting developments with botanicals. So like I think for a long time people like you know. Botanicals don't really do anything. They're just extracts that, you know, and so there's some really interesting now benefits, clinical benefits behind botanicals that you're starting to see. Consumers feel safe with those, and now they're actually scientifically proven, which is really exciting. So those as well.
Good stuff. So Laura, for you, we're seeing longevity move from, you know, more of a niche concept into a much more broader cultural conversation that touches beauty and nutrition, preventative health. So how does Ulta Beauty think about longevity as part of its future category strategy?
Yeah, this is another like loaded word, right? Just kind of like wellness is. Longevity, I think, has a very scientific meaning, right? And then there's what the popular kind of consumer is adopting longevity as, right? And it's not quite the same. So that puts the retailer actually in a little bit of a tricky spot. Because on the one hand, right, longevity, I think to a consumer is I just want to feel good and look good for longer, right? And that's what it's about. Actually, scientifically, it is very tied to lifespan and what you can do to, yes, like live well for longer, but improve your lifespan. And it needs to be science-backed. So I think for us, right, we meet the consumer where they are. We are inclusive about it. There are consumers that come into our store and their interpretation of longevity is more of kind of like that popular opinion. And so, you know, we carry products across beauty and wellness that kind of meet those definitions. I think for us specifically in wellness, we also, right, carry products that are science-backed and are tied to that more scientific definition of longevity. And again, it comes down to kind of that immersive experience and education that we're looking to provide the guests to guide them in that direction in the right way.
So you have things for both people.
We do.
Love
Yeah,
that.
we do.
So Shizu and Charlotte, what excites you most about building a wellness brand today? I feel like there's so much more that's possible than it was 5 years ago. So tell me what excites you most about wellness?
Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years. My first company was a cold pressed juice business. I feel like I'm ancient. Like I've been in health and wellness before it was called wellness. It was a green juice bottle that we'd carry with our SoulCycle bag. But I think what's most interesting is to be able to be on the forefront of creating what customers don't even know what they need or want yet. And I've always thought about that as like an entrepreneur is, despite the noise and how noisy it is right now with TikTok, the news, we have to look at the data and say, okay, what are customers purchasing? What are they coming back for again and again? Read the reviews, and then be able to come out with products that actually they might not even know yet, ingredients that they might not even heard of, or have existed for thousands of years, but just need that reinvention and that life back into it. And I think that's what we do at Apothecary, at least, is bring life back into forms of traditions and rituals that have been long before us, way before us. And so how do we bridge and be that connection? And I find a lot of joy and inspiration in that.
Yeah. Charlotte, what about you?
Yeah, for us, it's bringing joy into wellness and making it fun. I think for so long, wellness has felt like, and especially as we went through this phase of like very biohacker everything, right? Everything was a chore. It was something that you kind of had to endure. And we were kind of conditioned to feel like, okay, I have to do this for my wellness because it's going to make me feel good later, but it kind of is awful in the moment. And something that we want to do is reinvent that completely and flip it on its head, that taking care of yourself can be joyful. You can treat yourself and have it be good for you. Really delicious things can also be really, really good for you. And so I think injecting that ethos of joy and deliciousness and indulgence into wellness is really kind of the ultimate mission of what we're doing. And I think just creating that category more broadly and giving people the openness to say, okay, this can be fun, and let's make it fun.
It's a great note to end on. So are there any questions for our panelists? Anyone in the audience? Oh, I see one hand over there. Maybe keep your hand raised just so they know who to go to.
Yeah, I'm the question gal here because I've been using your tinctures, Shizu. I'm not kidding.
Oh, thank you.
I'm like, she's probably.
You're my girl.
So wind down is my favorite whenever I do my dryuary. The question is really for you. First of all, thanks for the energy. And it's interesting you mentioned that you worked in cold press, because the whole time I'm sitting here listening to you, I thought she should start cafes like Organic Avenue. And maybe you've already.
I already did that and then
Yeah,
sold it.
and so,
yeah,
like,
I'm glad
probably-
that life's behind me, no offense.
Not a scalable business. How do you see yourself expanding, meaning we can make tinctures at home, people can,
Yeah, it's,
do that?
thank you for the question, and thank you for being an incredible customer. We definitely have visions for opening our own apothecaries. I think apothecaries, historically, that word is actually not a beauty word. It's actually jars of herbs and chests of herbs and mixing and matching and having someone come in and show your tongue. And I think I love experiential. I think that's the future of where community and brand needs to be built. So we definitely are starting to look at stores and pop-ups. We've done 4 pop-ups over the years, but we absolutely would like to have a brick and mortar that personalizes liquids and tinctures and powders and all the different concoctions that you can make at home, for sure. Thank you. Yeah. You just iterated the thesis, though. Thank you. Next year.
Any other questions from our audience? Wow, we just want to go for cocktail hour. Oh, is there one? Oh, I see, right there. Yeah, the microphone's right there.
I have a question for Ulta. How are you thinking about the customer who, with the with customers who are thinking about GLP-1s and coming in for health and wellness? Are you seeing that's an opportunity? How are you addressing that?
Yes, we are seeing that as an opportunity. We have different types of consumers coming in. Some are a lot more open about it and about their journey than others, right? We have a model where we know about 1/3 of our consumers want that support and that guidance from an associate live in our store. We know about 1/3 also come in and they've answered the question already and are on a mission to get what they want because they've researched it at home. And then there are about 1/3 that kind of just are discovery and kind of wandering around, and they might take help, they might not. For GLP-1 support specifically, right, we do carry specific supplements and products that are aimed at that guest. But also, when you're on that type of treatment, right, a lot of people have symptoms that are treated holistically across our store, whether it's hair loss, whether it's concern about just skin and how the skin kind of elasticity responds. And so we really do, again, it's about associate education for us and really making sure that they are prepared to meet the associate kind of where they are in that moment. But we absolutely have solutions for those consumers.
Amazing. Well, oh, one more. Yeah, we have time for one more. Can we get a microphone over here, down here? Everyone else. Yeah.
So I'm very curious as health, beauty, wellness all kind of blend together now with 46 million Ulta loyalist members and all of these categories converging. Aside from the store associates, how are you communicating with those 46 million customers? How I think they all probably feel on some level that they need a coach to guide them through all of this. So how is Ulta communicating and educating this movement and this convergence?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say a couple things. So the question, if you guys couldn't hear, was, with the blend of all these industries coming together and all of the ingredient information, all of the things, right, around wellness, how are you supporting the consumer and how are you supporting educating the associate? Because it is a lot, right? What I would say is we are on a journey with it for sure, and I would say we're not done. We don't have it fully solved, right? We are testing some things in our stores with more dedicated associates, particularly for wellness, that we're training in a really deeper way, and we're measuring kind of the returns on that, and we'll make a call on how to scale that in the future. I would say we're leaning in digitally. We're doing that both with kind of brand education, where the brands directly through kind of their PDPs are communicating to the consumer. We're leaning in with AI on our broader site and how to meet the guest on that journey. So it's a little bit more interactive and they're able to respond almost like a chatbot on our site to specific questions and journeys they may be on. And then I'd say, finally, we're taking partners in this. And I think that's really kind of the way we're approaching building this business. We've got fabulous brand partners, right, who are doing education kind of on their own in the products. They've got field teams that are coming to our stores that are supporting also teaching our associates about the benefits, the ingredients, all of those things. And I would say that really, to me, is kind of the future of what we're looking at in this industry because it is a lot, right? It is a lot for one human to learn. And so it's really about equipping them across all of those different avenues and channels to help them find the right information.
Thank you. That's all the time we have today. Give a round of applause for our panelists.